Hey guys, Cameron, another movie for guys. This movie review, and this is a movie that I was definitely really looking forward to. I remember this is another movie that I was gonna see in theaters. Didn't get to see it. It took me a while to finally watch it, but I finally got a chance to watch it. And that is a movie that is a way overdue review because this movie it came out back in June. For some reason, I never watched it till now, but that movie is The Shallows, and this is a movie that I was really interested in for the most part, mainly because of the fact that there hasn't really been a lot of shark movies in a while. I think the last, really big one, and the only one that we really think of, is Jaws. And I was definitely interested in seeing how this movie was going to be, if it was going to hold up as well. But I was also worried because of the way the trailers were. It looked like it could be cheesy or it could be just very generic, and I didn't really know. But it was getting really good reviews, and I went into this really hoping that this was going to be a really good movie. And after watching it, I'm not gonna lie, while The Shallows is a really well done survival thriller, I was a bit disappointed with this movie. I really was. I really like this movie, but I wanted to love it. And I know, oh, you wanted to love it, why can't you just like it, accept that you liked it? I'm sorry. This is a movie that I feel could have been a lot better, and I'll get but let's get more into the plot of The Shallows. Basically, the plot of this movie is very, very simple. We focus on this girl, Nancy. She's a medical student of sorts, and she's just gone through a very hard tragedy. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but she basically is looking to spend some time alone, and she goes to this beach, basically, and she's very good at surfing and things like that, and basically, she decides to surf one day, and one day while she's surfing, she realizes that there is this great white shark in the ocean, and the movie eventually becomes her versus the shark, her trying to survive on her own, trying to get away, and that basically is the plot of The Shallows overall. But that's like a very rough description of the movie. Let's get more into the movie because there definitely is stuff that I do want to talk about. So let's first get into the acting, which the acting in this is a movie that I don't have a ton to say about the acting. I don't have a ton to say about this movie in general. It's a very basic movie, but let's first talk about Blake Lively, who I was definitely excited for. I heard that she gave one of the best performances of the summer, and that is absolutely the case. I really did like her performance in this movie, just where she is to go. I mean, you see her, she's terrified of this shark, and even in some of the smaller moments where she's with her family or she's talking to her sister and things like that through Skype, just those moments you really do feel connected to her character. I think overall she did a really good job. I like what they did with her character. I felt her character was very, very one note, but Blake Lively was so good that she made the character feel like there was more to it than what there was, and I think she was just very committed to the role. You could really tell she was trying to give a very memorable performance, and that is absolutely what she did. I really did love her performance in this movie. This is very much like Tom Hanks in Castaway, where she's alone throughout a lot of the movie, and sometimes it's hard to do that, but I think she carried it pretty well. You definitely do feel connected to her, and overall I thought she did a really good job, and I really did like what she had to do here. Unfortunately, the rest of the acting I can't really talk about. I think the rest of the actors were serviceable and they gave good performances, but they're barely in the movie. Blake Lively is the only character that's in this entire movie. The only other person I can really talk about is her sidekick, which isn't even a human. It's a seagull named Steven Seagal. I did like the way she communicated with this seagull, the way they kind of had this bond, a la Tom Hanks and Wilson from Castaway. Definitely got that vibe here. But in general, I can't really talk about the cast because this isn't really a movie focused on acting. It's definitely more focused on, thrills and things like that. But the acting, like I said, Blake Lively was great. It's just the rest of the actors I can't really talk about. They were good for what they had, just nothing really that memorable. Now let's get to the stuff that I really do want to talk about, which is the directing and the screenplay. Now, the director here, Jaume Collet Serra, I'm not going to lie, I haven't seen a ton of his movies. I haven't seen Nonstop. I haven't seen Run All Night. I haven't seen Unknown. I've seen Orphan. Orphan's an okay movie. I do like that movie overall. But I think this movie, he tried to do a little bit too much, honestly. I do think he did that. I think the tone shifts a bunch of times, and I'm going to be honest, the first 20 minutes of this movie feels like a very complex family drama is what it feels like, the first 20 minutes, with this girl trying to get away from her past and everything. Then when the shark comes in, it turns into a very different movie, and I feel like those two tones didn't really mesh as well as I think the director wanted to, and there definitely was a lot of tonal shifts in that way. Now, when the movie does get thrilling, you definitely do feel the thrills, but the first 20 minutes feels very off from the rest of the movie. It feels like a completely different movie, and I don't really think it worked in the way the director wanted to, sadly. I really wanted to like the directing, but I didn't. But that's not my biggest issue with this movie. My biggest issue with this movie, without a doubt, is the writing. The writing in this movie, I think, is okay. I thought it could have been a lot better, though. There are a lot of things that they said in the beginning of this movie that I was like, okay, that's really compelling. That's really interesting. Let's see where they go with that. Let's see where we end up going from here. And they just didn't do a ton with the writing. In fact, it seemed like to me they didn't really care as much about the writing. Because once we focus on the shark, that's literally all we focus on, is her trapped with this shark, and that's fine for what they did, but I'm not gonna lie, it started to get very, very repetitive, after a certain point. I mean, after the 40-minute mark, I really started to lose interest, and I didn't think I was going to, but I really did. A lot of this movie is her calling for help, trying to stitch up a wound, a leg wound that she had, trying to alert people if there was a shark, trying to call for help and things like that, and it just felt very, very repetitive. It felt like we could have done a lot more, and it didn't seem like she had much to work with. As good as Lively was, she definitely did elevate this movie. I feel like the writing there just really wasn't there, and I feel like they could have focused a little bit more on her family. It's clear they were trying to make this more of a personal story, but I really thought about Jaws and what made Jaws so great. What made Jaws so great is that Jaws is not just a survival thriller. It's also a very in-depth character film about the fears that we have and, you know, facing your fears and tapping into those, and they did it so well in that movie. There's not really that amount of compelling, you know, characters in this movie. In fact, Nancy in general could have been a very compelling character. She just turned out to be very one-note because they barely focus on the interesting stuff. And when you eventually find out what that tragedy is, it's fine, but it doesn't really change much in the movie. They made it seem like it was this huge deal, and it really wasn't, and that just didn't really work for me. And the other thing that kind of pissed me off is that there are things that happen here that are never really brought up again. There's a part in this movie where something ends up happening to her belongings while she's out in the water, and they don't really ever bring it up again. I don't know why. I feel like there definitely could have been more tension here, and that's something that really I was a little bit upset with. And let me just talk about the thrills, because the thrills are definitely there. You definitely do feel the thrills of the shark. You definitely feel the tension throughout the movie. It's not as earned as the movie wants it to. I mean, it's definitely not as high stakes. The movie definitely feels like it's a lot, you know, I think the movie in general, it felt like the stakes were a lot higher than they were, and they just really weren't. Like, I knew pretty much how things were going to turn out by the end of this movie, and it's very predictable in that sense, and it didn't really work in the way I wanted to. The cinematography here, I was a little very, very let down by. I mean, I was expecting the cinematography to at least be good, and it really wasn't that great, I have to say. I mean, the best thing I will give the cinematography is that the shots of the beach look very real. You can definitely tell they filmed on this location. You get that vibe. I mean, I'm watching this in October, and I felt like it was right back in summer. They did a really good job with that. This is a movie that's meant to be seen in the summer. You know, when you're in the summer or on a beach, this is definitely one of those kind of movies. But there is definitely a overabundance of close-up shots, and especially slow-mo. There's so much unnecessary slow-mo in this movie, and I mean, it's not just in surfing scenes. There's a scene where she's on a beach, she's like slowly wiping her forehead. I don't know why they did that, and it just didn't really work. I don't know what they were really thinking with the slow-mo, what exactly they were trying to achieve, and people have said this before, and I'm gonna agree, there are parts of this movie that don't feel like a movie. Some of this movie, to me, felt like one of those cheesy, like, come on down to this cruise commercial. That's what parts of this movie felt like, and I really didn't want it to feel that way, but the first 20 minutes of this movie, before we actually get into the conflict with the shark, it very much feels that way, and it just didn't really work in the way the movie wanted to. I was a little bit let down by that, and the look of the shark in general, I wasn't too impressed by it. I thought that I saw the horrible CGI in that trailer. I thought they were going to fix it. Sadly, they didn't. They really did not try to fix the CGI. When you eventually do see the shark, you only see a shark about 3 times throughout this entire movie, but because of the way the shark looks, it just feels very fake, and like I said, the tension just isn't there. I mean, think about the shark in Jaws. Like I said, that shark kept breaking. I mean, all the problems they went through, they could have done a lot more with it, and it seemed like they tried to take a very easy way out, and I feel like they could have done a lot more with this shark, and they just didn't do what I really wanted them to do with it. It just didn't really work in the way I think it should have. And then the score here as well, the score felt very out of place at points sometimes. There's very thrilling music, and then there's some pop song playing, and it just didn't really work. I didn't really feel like the movie knew what it wanted to be from the score. The editing this movie, I found to be okay. The movie definitely does fly by. It's only a few, like I said, it's only like 80 minutes long, but like I said, the 40 minutes, it didn't drag. It definitely is not a movie that dragged, but just I became very disinterested in what was going on. I found it to be very repetitive, and it just didn't feel like they had much to work with in general, and that really did weigh down the impact of the movie for me. But I will say that this movie does have some scenes that are genuinely great. I thought some of the scenes in this movie were actually very well executed, especially some of the scenes where it's just her alone on this rock, not knowing how to survive. I mean, you don't really know if she's going to get out of this, and they did that really, really well. It's just the movie really does drag, and like I said, after a while it becomes very repetitive, and again, a lot of things this movie felt very impractical. There were a lot of things where I was like, I don't really know if it would go that way, and that really did ruin my enjoyment of the film. The movie seemed like it was going for this really realistic type tone, and there are times where the movie does do things that are very realistic, but then they try to do things that are just very, very Hollywoodized, and that's something that I felt the movie did way too much. Some things this movie honestly did feel like Jaws the Revenge, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't want it to, but the way the shark is destroyed especially very much did feel that way, and it really did deter from my enjoyment of the film overall. But overall, guys, The Shallows for me is a very disposable survival thriller. I wanted to like it a lot more. I just didn't. I did really like a lot of this movie. I think Blake Lively's really good. I think there are some really good scenes in there, and I think they set up a very compelling narrative. They just didn't really know what to do with it, and once the movie really gets rolling, it becomes very boring and, not boring, but just becomes very tedious and meandering overall. And I am going to give The Shallows, while I did not love this movie as much as I wanted to, I am going to give The Shallows a 3.5 out of 5 or a B. For those positives I have it are very strong. Blake Lively gives one of the best performances I've probably seen this year. I think she was really good in this movie. I think that she definitely did a really good job, and I think some of the scenes, were very well executed. It's just the movie as a whole, as a movie, just did not work in the way I wanted to. I think it could have done a lot more with it, and they just didn't really do what I wanted them to do with it overall. But anyways, guys, I'm review The Shallows. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall. Love to your thoughts on it. Do you feel the same way I do? Did you like it more? Love to your thoughts on that. Don't think I disliked this movie, because I really did like this movie. I think on a rewatch, I might like it even more. I don't really know, though. But that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next one, which will be for another movie review, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.